didn't. Juan Soto got a day off yesterday, but he continues to play slightly subpar baseball compared to what fans expect from him because our expectations are so very high of Juan Soto. Will, what does Soto bring to the team, though, even when he's not at his best?
The presence of being one of the absolute best hitters in baseball at all times. I thought Paul Skeens put it greatly the other day. It was sort of an under the radar comment, but he was essentially asked, like, what do you think of this Mets 1-2-3? Like, what makes them so good, that sort of thing. And his answer was essentially like, look, they don't really have slumps. Like, we could call them slumps, we could call them bad stretches, but they're not really bad stretches. They're just a couple of days where they didn't get a hit. Because there's still that same presence, and that's what Juan Soto is when he's in that lineup, and it forces the other team to adjust their pitching when they know that he's due up in a certain inning. And for the Mets' perspective of having the Lindor, Soto, Alonso trio right at the top, that gives you a switch hitter, a lefty and a righty, who are at the top of their primes in their careers, and it's just really hard to match up against those guys, especially late in games. And we've seen that unfold, and we've also seen the idea of it being a boon to Pete Alonso, right? It's helping him either get a little bit less pressure to carry the entire load of the offense, and also just see better pitches sometimes because there's people on base and they have to go after him, or they have the bases loaded for Brandon Nimmo or something like that. So we're seeing that trickle down effect. And Juan Soto has not really got going. He's shown some glimpses of getting hot. We have not yet seen that stretch of games where he just dominates for a couple of weeks, which he's definitely capable of, and which I suppose will happen very soon. And it will happen multiple times throughout the course of the season. We've just not seen it quite yet here in the middle of May, but he still had an impact nonetheless on this roster. That's pretty obvious to see.
Yeah, for sure. And Trevor, you were on the team when Francisco Lindor first joined and when he was struggling. What was the vibe in the clubhouse when a marquee free agent underperformed? Do you see any parallels with Soto?
I would say, at least amongst the players, it's not something that we are super worried about. It's more like making sure you got that guy's back, because you know how good they are, and you know that an additional pressure can make getting going could be a little bit harder, no matter who you are. If it feels like the spotlight's always on you, and to do a little bit more every single time you go out there, it makes it tough. So that was more of the thing you think about, and I think that it just so happens when you have a Juan Soto that yeah, he's playing a little bit below I think his expectations, and I would say he's hitting well, but he's not Juan Soto level. It's funny, he's like on pace for a 5.5 WAR season, which is I think anyone would take, though that's not quite $50 million a year. It's still like $35 million a year, so he is slightly below. I just think that their team being 12 games over 500 right now has made it softer and easier to deal with. And when it comes to runners in scoring position, he's probably the biggest culprit in not getting the job done, which is just not something he's done for his career. He's been a scary guy to face in those situations. And if you look at all his peripheral stats, everything is on par or slightly below where it usually is with strikeouts and walks. He's not doing it. Nothing's dropped precipitously. There's nothing to be worried about. It's just whether or not 4 or 5 hits have been caught or gone to the gap, and it would be completely different. We'd have a different conversation if 5 of them would have dropped. So I am feeling good about it. I think that clubhouse knows who he is. He makes everyone else better. Pete Alonso better. Everyone around him better. He's a guy that he could strike out 20 straight times, and as a pitcher, you're like, I still am not confident that I'm going to strike this guy out, even though he hasn't struck out or he hasn't hit the ball in a week. He's one of those guys, and that's going to be there for a long time. He would have to struggle for a very long time for that to change in the minds of pitchers. So that is always going to be valuable to the rest of the lineup. And fortunately, the rest of the lineup has contributed in big ways, and they're a very good team because of it.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets winning games is definitely a great distraction from what we think we should be seeing from Juan Soto so far. Let's talk about the Subway Series. The Mets take on the Yankees in the Bronx for the next 3 games. Trevor, Juan Soto has played it cool. He's saying he welcomes the heat from Yankee fans. But do you think that kind of negative energy will hurt his performance, or do you think it'll fire him up? Because it can go either way.
Oh, I think he loves that. I think he loves it. I got to be honest, guys, everyone at home listening, because you guys are New York sports fans. You don't choose one New York team after being on the other New York team unless you love that. It's just the way that it works, and that's where he wants to be. He wants to be in that fire, whether it's his home team or not. And don't be surprised if that we're talking about. He's got to get going. Maybe we need a spark. This could be one of those times where he comes up in that big spot. He just wants to either silence people or get them excited. He does. I think he just thrives off that stuff. It gives him energy, and you see another level from Juan Soto. He wants to put himself in that position. So the Soto shuffle didn't come from nothing. He loves that battle, that come at me type of attitude from the other team. So why not want that from the other fans?
Yeah, no, you're right. This could be the spark that he needs. Will, is there more on the line for these teams now after the Soto trade?
I think so. They're not going to say that, right? And nobody's going to admit to that or even play that game. But I think that only makes sense from an outside point of view. I mean, you bring in this guy; it's a huge statement for the Mets. This is something that it's unprecedented. Like, you don't see a star switch places in that way. Going from the Yankees, where if he signs a huge deal with the New York Yankees, he's on pace to have a monument out there at some point, because that's how good he is. Even though he didn't come up as a Yankee, that would be the case. Like, he would have a fantastic career no matter where he went. And so if he chose to stay there, he would have been celebrated as such. And so by coming to the Mets, it was a huge statement for New York baseball that, hey, the Mets are there. They're going to be there, or they want to be there. And so to do that, you're going to have to beat them as well. Like, you can't just sign the player and then that's that. Like, you have to back it up, and you have to start winning games, and you start to be that team in New York, where we're still far from that for the Mets based on history. But in order to get there, they're going to have to take it as seriously as such. And these games are huge for the city. It's huge for baseball as a whole, because I just think that there's nothing better when both teams are thriving in New York for baseball.
Oh, absolutely. Trevor, are the Yankees under pressure after getting swept by the Mets last season? Or do the players forget about those things year to year?
I think it depends on the guy and who was there and how long they've been a member of that team. One thing that actually struck me a little bit, and I hope this isn't anticlimactic, but I thought the Subway Series was a huge production for the players, and it wasn't as big of a deal to them as I thought, at least in the Mets side. And I was a little bit surprised by it, because I've always seen it as an outsider looking in as like a huge, as rivalries go, right? It's one of the big ones in baseball. But guys treated it or at least approached it, let's go win the game, and this isn't bigger in any way, shape, or form. But maybe I think now that both teams are good, and that they're both top of their division, and it's definitely like a who's the best team in New York situation. It's been that conversation, I think, for the last few years. It's getting a little bit spicier and a little bit more exciting, especially with the amount of money both these teams are, how big their payrolls are. They're really on par in a lot of ways that they haven't been in the past, and I think that's bringing that rivalry back a little bit. I think it's getting a little bit more important to the players. Each year it goes on where Judge is the captain, and now we have Lindor and Soto. It's superstar on superstar, and that's, in my opinion, that's the way the Subway Series should be. And so it's definitely heated up in the last couple of years.
No, Trevor, it's a huge production for us on the media side, and I'm not ashamed to say that. This is definitely one of the weekends that we look forward to most during the season. All right, so that's going to do it for us here on Mets Off Day Live. Thank you so much for joining us, Trevor and Will. Always a pleasure to do this with you.